1825, as you can see on the screen. We are going to mute all lines to avoid background noise. You can, as you can see on the screen, we have some tips for you. Please use the chat box to type your comments and questions for the participants, for the presenters. And please type your parent center name and state into the chat box as is indicated over there. You can also use the feature raise your hand using the icon at the top left of the screen.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone now.
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
Where did everybody go? Someone has to mute their computer speakers. Deborah?
Hi, Lisa, and hello, everyone. We are going to get started. I believe there are a few more people arriving, and I just want to remind you that your line will be muted during the call. However, if you do have a comment or a question, feel free to post that in the chat box. And there's also a function where you can raise your hand if you look at the top left-hand set of margins in your at the top of your screen in the toolbar. So feel free to raise your hand if you have a question and or post any questions or comments that you might have in the chat box. The webinar today is going to be presented to us by Lisa Küpper, who is here at the Center for Parent Information and Resources. And Lisa is our director for the development of our publications and our resources. And we're also going to be joined during this webinar by Josie Badger. And Josie is working with the PEAL Center, which is the PTI for the state of Pennsylvania, where she leads their youth leadership development activities. And she has also been newly brought on as the co-director for the new National Center for Technical Assistance to the PTIs that were recently funded by the Rehabilitative Services Administration. And so Lisa and Josie are going to guide us through some very interesting information about how we as parent centers can become more involved with our youth, and also the resources that we have made available for you on the Parent Center Hub. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, we decided the place to start was to talk about why self-advocacy skill building is a priority for the parent centers now. I know you all have been doing a lot of work in this regard for a while. Now it's part of the package, the application package that OSEP put out when they put out the PTI competition in 2015. And we've extracted some of the language from that application package that really hones in on the part that deals with PTIs building and increasing the capacity of youth with disabilities to be self-advocates. You can see you have two, at a minimum, things you need to do. One is for the parents, as you've been doing all these years, and the other now is about working with youth. To answer the question of what more could be said, or what was said in the recent RFP, we made a handout, and you can see the address there at the bottom. And basically what it does is it pulls out the language from OSEP's RFP, its request for proposals, and each parent center that wrote to the competition needs to give a description of how they will do certain things that are stated in the RFP. So let's take a real quick look at that before we get into how you might want to do that. Okay, one of the things from the RFP, actually there were 4 things that were said about supporting youth with disabilities in building their self-advocacy skills. This, for parent centers, includes knowing what youth with disabilities need. And that includes, it's quite a broad reach, underserved youth, incarcerated youth, youth in foster care, and youth with limited English proficiency. Oops, this thing is running away with me. Hold on a minute, let's go back. The second thing that this involves for parent centers is using best practices to provide information and training to the young people with disabilities. And that covers quite a broad range as well in terms of using adult learning principles when you interact with the youth, but also adjusting the information and the training that you provide to wherever their level is developmentally or cognitively. So let's have a quick look at the other 2. Parent centers, in terms of supporting youth with disabilities, this also includes knowing the current evidence-based education practices and the policy initiatives that are going on in self-advocacy. And you can see there on the left that the priority page that the CPIR developed on this topic can help you do that, get in touch with the latest thinking and training materials and such like on working with youth. It's also very important, according to the RFP and the parent center work, to work with appropriate partners that also are involved in serving youth. And you'll hear more about this from Josie when she speaks. Okay, so here's this priority page that's on the hub. You can see the address. And now I'm going to attempt, you can see the table of contents. It was at the very top. And this is what the page, how the page is organized. So first you look at what is self-advocacy and why is it important. Then we've listed a bunch of resources that are for youth themselves. They talk directly to youth. They're not talking to service providers or whatever. They're talking to youth. And then we have a bunch of fact sheets, toolkits, and training materials that you can use that have been developed specifically to help young people with disabilities learn to become effective self-advocates. And my favorites, of course, are the resources that the Parent Center Network has developed because they are really interesting. And then we have a few, but not many, resources in other languages. Now, I am going to switch over now, and we are going to take a look at, if I can find it, of course, because this is always the challenge. For some reason, it's always a challenge with this Adobe Connect. Okay, let's see. Okay, I hope that you all can see that, because I can no longer see the chat box. So if you can't see it, somebody please speak up.
No, we can see it, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Indira. Okay, here's the page, and you'll see that we launched it in January 2015, but we've added some new resources for this webinar. Okay, there's the table of contents that I just showed you a minute ago. And the reason we want to do this tour of these different resources is because when we were putting the page together, it was just fascinating how creative some of these resources are and how comprehensive. So we hope that you'll take advantage of the hunt and search that we've done to just connect right up with them. Okay, we start off with Wright's Law, who has a very excellent definition of what self-advocacy is and why it's important. If you actually go to the Wright's Law website, which I'm sure is a frequent place to visit for parent centers, you'll see that that's about the sum total of the kind of narrative information, and then you have all these things you can explore in terms of other resources. Here's a new one they've listed, self-advocacy for high school students with disabilities. So that is still going to involve for you a lot of searching through what suits your need for how you want to work with your particular audience. I like this resource, but I'll warn you right now, it's from Australia, so there are parts of it. Here it is. Understand, it's very step-by-step, which is very nice, and it includes understanding self-advocacy, and then you have understand yourself. You can see that it's talking directly to youth with disabilities, and they have all these activities. This is where it's not very applicable to parent centers in the U.S. because the understanding your rights and responsibilities is tied to what is Australian law and Australian rights and responsibilities. But as you can see, as you go on, it's pretty in-depth for these various sections on the side, like understanding the problem, understand how to prepare for self-advocacy, understand how to do self-advocacy, and have all these really nice activities. So you might want to explore those resources. Now, when we were talking about what do parent centers need in terms of materials, one of the things that came up was you also may have to work with parents and kind of set the stage for parents understanding why this is important. And from the Utah Parent Center is a brand new training video on self-determination, and it's very sweet. In English and Spanish it's available. So if you just click there, it's meant to speak and to work with parents. So if that's part of your program, you may find this video very useful. Okay, let's skip down here to the resources for youth themselves. We've tried to put underneath if the materials are useful with a particular audience. Now this group, Learn About Self-Advocacy, would be very useful with young people who have intellectual disabilities. And I'll show you why. It starts off, or that link will take you to what's essentially a very limited words, sentence, question at a time with a brief, very brief, you can see down here it's like 14 seconds. Person with a disability talking about this particular question that's been asked. And you just can go from little snippet to little snippet as you move through whatever you're doing with youth. The youth can certainly do it themselves. But that's, you can see how much is available of it. It just runs through a whole gamut of things about self-advocacy. But that's not all this website has. Look, you can find self-advocacy groups. So if you click, let's say, in Virginia, it lists organizations in Virginia that are involved in self-advocacy training and information, and they're good places to visit. So you can connect the youth you're working with other places in your state that are working on this. I especially like this one right here, View Stories from Self-Advocates, because you have a lot of different topics when you're talking about a youth becoming an adult and trying to take charge of all the things that adults are responsible for. So if you look, you can see there's a lot of little video clips on the ADA. There are about the civil rights, about belonging, about self-advocacy. If you go down, it just keeps going. It's amazing. Look at that. Isn't that something? And I think that for working with young people with disabilities, hearing other individuals with disabilities speak to the question of self-advocacy can be very meaningful. So I would encourage you to have a look in that little library, see what you can find that would be useful to your audiences. Okay. This one we're not going to visit, but I do want to say becoming a self-advocate, it's an online community for young people with mental health challenges. And it actually has quite a lot of information written directly to young people, and it's meant to be like an online community. So the young people can speak to each other about their issues and read what others have to say. Okay, coming down here a little further, this youth with you. I don't really understand the title, Youth for Advocacy, but anyway, it's interesting to look at this site. Uh-oh, something's up here. That's not right. I'm going to have to check that out as to what happened there. Okay, but now their website must be down or something, that this is going to one of these screens that looks like it's up for sale, but that's a shame. Okay, Youthhood, let's go on to Youthhood. That just shows you how fast things change on the web. Youthhood is also a very good place to work with young people and with the adults that you work with. You can see it's an online community, and it is about being growing up. And you have to register. It's free, and then you can go anywhere you want on the site. But they have a place for youth to start, and then they have a place for adults to start. So that you can look at self-advocacy and all the aspects of growing up and becoming an adult, each from your own perspective, which is really interesting. They have the high school, the job center, the hangout, the government, the health clinic, the apartment. So they're really looking at the spectrum of things that are involved in growing up and becoming self-determining. Good place to visit. Now, this here, I'm not going to click on it, but I do want to say it's called Find the Captain in You. And it is really kind of hilarious, this video. It's these two young people on a morning talk show that they call it Midday in the Valley. And they even have a superhero who's called Captain Self-Advocacy. And it's a 10-minute video, but it's a very good place or way to start, let's say, a session with young people. Okay, speak up, get what you need. This is a really good, it's really interesting how it's put together in terms of a multimedia package. You can see it's a young person, and it just goes through. You click through, and he's talking to you about why it's important to be self-determining. What I think is really interesting is that they actually have, you can type, you see it says some of my goals, to grow up strong. You can type in. The young person can type right in there, and then it records it. So this is a really fun thing for young people to do as they're starting on this journey. Now, here are some fact sheets, toolkits, and training materials that can be helpful to you as a parent center. A lot of them are curricula. Look here, Youthhood, we visited that a little bit ago, has a curriculum for young adults. I'm a fan of this particular site. They have a bunch of materials that are really worth exploring. Transition education materials, you can see, and they're all curriculum. They have things for activity sheets and handouts and workbooks for the young people, and they also have facilitator guides and all sorts of things. So here's the me lessons for teaching self-awareness and self-advocacy. They also have student-directed transition planning about getting students involved in the IEP, and then more down here, including transition resources for people with significant disabilities, and even ones that you start at the elementary school level, building the awareness and the ability to self-advocate. So you might want to really explore there and see what they have that is appropriate to what you're trying to do. This is my health, my responsibility, and so you can already tell by the title that it's about young people transitioning from, let's say, pediatric health care to their own health care programs as an adult, including everything that might involve making medical appointments, nutrition, staying healthy. It's an 8-session curriculum that's based on group training. So if you want to work on health-related matters and increase the capacity of young people to understand what the questions are about their health and how they need to address those in a responsible way, this would be a very good place to start. Now this one here, Personal Preferences Indicator, a guide for planning. It is for people with significant disabilities. They may not be able to speak, or they may use alternative communication systems, and it's available in English and Spanish. And I just wanted to give you a little look at this because it's actually used by a family member or the professionals that are working with these young people. And it is very not word-based. You can see this, like, it's divided into these indicators. So you have individual indicators, you have emotional indicators, and you can see that it's an exploration that you would do with a young person to discover more about what their favorites are, or what calms the person, or what makes the person happy. How do you know? It's a really interesting indicator preference inventory, and it's available in English and in Spanish. Okay, now I have to commend y'all. If I have left out materials that are available in the Parent Center Network, please do write to us and we can include them here. But here are some things that are already available from other parent centers. This one, we've already seen that the Utah Parent Center has the transition self-determination video that's available in English and Spanish, and they also have this tips for teens about self-advocacy. Now from Vermont Family Network, in the driver's seat, it is actually a series of workshops and self-advocacy, and it covers, I'll go to the table of contents. Here are the 6 workshops. Here they are. And it's all laid out inside this PDF that takes you through what the curriculum is and what you can do with, workshop by workshop. So that is very helpful, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I would love to go to this one, but unfortunately, the way it's from the PC in Virginia. It's a great booklet, but if I click on it, it's going to want to download instead of opening. But if you are interested in finding particular checklists or worksheets that you can use with youth, this is very helpful. It has a lot of checklists that young people can fill out, and things about health and all. And there's not very much. Only at the very end is there a lot of information about resources in Virginia, because this is developed by the Virginia PTI. The rest is very applicable wherever you go. Okay, and then finally, resources in other languages, which unfortunately I couldn't find very many. So if you know of any more we need to add here, and I'm sure you must, because it's a big priority, please do let us know. Anyway, that is the end of this little tour. Now if I can get back to the PowerPoint, which is ever a challenge. Okay. And, oops, no, I think I'll go down here. There we go. Give me a minute here. Okay. That's pretty much our little tour. And as you can see, this page is a work in progress. There is a work group or in the workspaces is a great place for us to trade information and strategies and materials as we work with youth and as you develop your own materials or find out more about how to use the ones that are already available. And now I'd like to turn this over to someone who was in the trenches and has a lot of activities going on and work about working with young people who have disabilities. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Josie Badger, and I turn it over to you, Josie. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, you ready for your slide?
Okay, great. So thank you guys for, number one, inviting me to speak. This is definitely a field of my passion. And I want to say hello to some of you who are on the call that I either know in real life or via email world. So hello, everyone. So I guess I want to start off just talking a little bit about myself and why I got involved in this work. So growing up, I've had my disability since birth, and I have a rare form of muscular dystrophy. I'm one of 8 in the world who have it, and it affects all voluntary muscles. So that means breathing, talking and chewing, reading, whatever. And so it obviously had a pretty dramatic impact on my life. But growing up, I didn't know anyone who had a disability. I saw some of the kids who were in the special ed classroom, but beyond that, that's all I knew. And I also knew that often if you affiliated with groups who were not maybe seen as cool as others, you too were judged. And so kind of out of self-protection, I felt that I needed to be as non-disabled as possible. I think that there's a wonderful thing about having fully inclusive classrooms and lives, but I think we also lose a part of our identity through it too. So I grew up fully included in classes and was involved in 4-H, which is a youth club for mainly young adults who live in rural areas. And I spent a lot of my time and energy trying to pretend that I was someone that I wasn't. I tried to be the non-disabled Josie. And obviously that was a little tricky. I couldn't get away from the fact that I needed my power scooter. But I was at that point able to go without my ventilator for multiple hours. But then when I would get home from school, I would collapse of exhaustion. So I spent most of my energy trying to be someone else. And even during that time, I pursued a career in veterinary medicine, hoping to not be a disabled person. But my life completely changed when my mom forced me, to be honest, to go to a youth leadership program for young adults with disabilities. Now, since that time, the program, which was the National Youth Leadership Network, has disbanded, although their information is still available. But the conference was probably 30 young adults with disabilities who were led by also young adults with disabilities. But it wasn't about sitting around talking about woe is me. It was talking about empowerment and leadership. And for the first time, I looked around and I felt like I was where I belonged. I felt like I had found another family. Because really, people with disabilities have their own culture. And a lot of them don't know it unless they've been introduced to the community. And so that is really where I started these programs. I realized that there was nothing like this back in my state. I realized that, for a lot of us who have been supported by the ADA and by IGDA, although we're gaining superior education, we're able to do more, we're losing a part of who we are and acceptance of who we are. So I wanted to make sure that other young adults really had a chance to experience and have what I had. When I came back to Pennsylvania, I started reaching out to groups that were in the area, in addition to places like the Department of Ed that had a lot of programs for professionals and parents, but not really anything for young adults. And so, as fate would have it, the Department of Ed in our state was looking at trying to develop a youth leadership initiative to provide kind of support to the Department of Ed and insight on things that could be helpful to support youth with disabilities. And that was really the start of all of it. We really had to start from scratch on what does youth leadership look like? What does it mean at a state level? What does it mean when you have a limited amount of funding or certain responsibilities you have to achieve? And thank you for the slide. This is good. So with this, this continuum, as hopefully you can see, is what we eventually realized what we were pursuing. So we looked at the fact that youth enter a lot of programs without the basic skills or knowledge about themselves, about programs that are available, and so we couldn't assume that we could throw any young adult with a disability into a leadership program. We had to make sure that we met them where they were. And so on this continuum, you can see that we start youth development, and I will explain these in a few slides. But then we move into intrinsic leadership, which is more the self-use. We'll go into that. And then extrinsic leadership, which is probably how most of you would define leadership. Go ahead and change the slide. Thank you. So youth development. This is a theory that was developed, and I feel that it addresses a lot of the growth of young adults, but maybe doesn't go into the areas quite in depth enough. So to be able to make sure that young adults are truly growing and achieving their goals, you have to look at these 5 different areas. There's connecting, leading, thriving, learning, and working. And for them to be truly successful in adulthood, you have to be able to address all these. So connecting would be relationships, networking, the basic social skills. Leading we'll get into. Thriving is more self-development, working, self-determination, working, obviously, employment, but self-motivation also, and then learning. The ability to know how you learn and to be able to use that to move forward. Go ahead. Thank you. So youth leadership includes both intrinsic and extrinsic skills. So if we're going to look at the intrinsic skills, we're looking more at self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-determination. So for some of the young adults I've worked with, they would come into a disability leadership program that I was running, and we would asked, who all has a disability, and no one would raise their hand. Meanwhile, they were at a disability event. And so I think that self-awareness is so vital. And I think that by hiding disability, we're actually making it more taboo. So we always make sure that young adults start to know who they are when they walk in that door, and that might be their interests or strengths, but that might also be their disability, but recognizing that they're not alone and that obviously disability has not detrimentally affected us, really helps them to understand and accept that. Go ahead. So this kind of explains it a little bit more, but we go into extrinsic, which is the ability to guide or direct others, often a role model position. So we believe that generally young adults should be developing their intrinsic skills before they're able to pursue extrinsic leadership. So with most of our development programs, either through the Pennsylvania Department of Ed, or I also helped to develop a program at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. We start out with these very basic understanding of who they are and helping them to accept that. And one of the strongest methods is to have them share their story with their peers, having them talk about who they are, for better or worse, with people who understand it. So throughout all of this, we want to ensure that in the best scenario, young adults are leading and running these sessions. They are developing the materials. They are making sure to invite people, because I think that those one-on-one relationships will bring in more young adults to be involved than sending out a flyer or a radio message. But once you start getting young adults involved, then that will grow, because they'll have people they know to get involved as well. Go ahead. So program sustainability. I think that one of the hardest parts of youth development is just getting youth in the front door. They might see a flyer about disability. They might see a flyer that seems a little childish. And of course, they're not going to want to come to that. They want to come to something cool, something that their peers are going to. So obviously that is probably one of the hardest parts. But the other aspect to that is young adults grow up. So you might have had a young adult who did a wonderful job running stuff, but eventually they're going to age out, and you will have to find another youth to run the program. Ongoing leadership training and transition, sort of what I just said, but recognizing that this leadership training has to go on constantly to keep a fresh group of youth and young adults in the program. Promote individual ownership of the program. So with these programs, I think for a lot of us who have been in the system for a while, we know what works and what doesn't work. And often, at least myself, I want to be the naysayer. Oh, that won't work. Oh, don't do that. But for these young adults, we want them to own something. We want them to learn this on their own, to be successful or to fail. I'm not saying to just throw them to the wolves, but it's about allowing them to brainstorm and make up ideas, even if those ideas might not work as well as some ideas that you had. Develop tasks, delegate tasks to as many people as possible. So you want a lot of young adults to have a job. You don't want them to just come, show up, sit down, listen for an hour, and go home. As you find that young adults are attending, and you see them a few times, I would very much encourage you to ask them to do something in the program, whether that be to speak, rather that be planning an activity. So don't let them be tokens, but allow them to own it, to be involved. I remember in high school, we had a lot of plays, and in the plays, we always hated it, but our director would invite the elementary school kids to be a part of it, which wasn't cool. However, that is where other people came, got involved, and were interested in it. So as you get more youth involved, more people are going to come with them, and that's really important. Don't rely on one funder. So this is always tricky, but as we got more involved with the Department of Ed, there were some things that they could not pay for. So by developing those relationships, we were able to do more and provide more holistic services to our youth. So services might have been, now this is vague, but maybe transportation support or paying for a care attendant, whatever that might be. And recognizing that I think that youth have a different set of needs than most professionals, and I think we say, oh yeah, that's very true, but looking at time frames of young adults, they don't have the normal business hours to get on a call, or during the week. They probably will not be able to go to an event during the day. So recognizing that their time is different, that potentially their energy level might be different, and trying to support them in those roles, using resources wisely. So one example there is to make sure that you're using young adults to the best of their ability. So using them to connect to other young adults or give advice, but not necessarily to do logistics or surveys, because we want to use what they're good at. And eventually those skills will come, but not often at the beginning. And community. So the boards that I have seen that fell apart are the ones who didn't talk, the ones that maybe the adult ally or director made all the choices and just told the young adults what they were doing. Those groups probably lasted a year at the most. So trying to empower them, asking opinions, calling them, emailing, texting, whatever. Just trying to keep those lines of communication open. I think that's the last slide I have. But these programs are, oh, yes, I have my doctorate, so I cite everything. I'm sorry, but if you want more info, I have a lot. The PEAL Center, which is the Pennsylvania Center, has developed numerous leadership development programs for young adults with parallel parent programs. We should have a toolkit coming out, I'm hoping within the next few months, that talks about how to host like a weekend-long event similar to what I was describing. There are plenty of videos that are also out there, but as we move forward, I would love to work with any of you who are interested in this program. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Lisa.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I muted or
Yes.
unmuted? Okay,
We can hear you.
Thank you, Josie. That was terrific. Now we come to the part, although I could listen to you all night, where we really want to hear from our people in the audience. If you have questions or comments or suggestions or whatever, now would be the time to bring them up and talk amongst yourselves, and let's see what we can answer. I'm assuming that maybe we can unmute everyone,
Okay,
or it's too dangerous.
I've unmuted everyone, but Stacy Forrest had a question for Josie, and she's asked, are the PEAL Center resources on the PEAL Center website?
I was just typing that. So I am hoping that within the next few months after we get our final go-ahead, that those will be online. But the videos, so for every Leadership Development Institute, as I said, we have them tell their story. And we have those videoed and on YouTube. They're very powerful. And they are on, if you would search PEAL Center, we have a page on YouTube, and they're all connected to that. But as soon as this toolkit's approved, we'll hopefully get out here on the Küpper.
Yeah,
So thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, you can see here that we have a web page, like with the other webinars, that has this PowerPoint presentation. It has the handout about the RFP language, and it will very shortly, hopefully, have the actual audio for the webinar. As you can find Josie's name there and a link to the PEAL Center. And hopefully we'll be able to connect that way when you get the go-ahead, Josie, to go real public. We can put some of those resources there and in the repository, the resource library on the hub.
Lori,
yeah, there's also,
Pardon me?
Lisa, Helene Falco, she shared a website that has terrific resources and videos.
Yes, I saw that.
By the
Virginia. The Undetermined website?
Yes, it's IamDetermined.org. It is on the chat box.
Yes, and it is a very good website. If you'll let me 1 second share something else with you. Let's see. It's not sharing this, and I'm going to share my screen and go back to here, to the web page that we were visiting. If you go into the resource library and you go to the NICHE resources, you'll see down here a Transition to Adulthood suite. And if you click on that, it's like 9 pages of things, aspects of transitioning to adulthood. If you come all the way down to the bottom, you can see the students get involved. And it has a lot of additional materials that you can use in terms of working with young people and getting them involved. And I think the I'm Determined website is listed here. Well, maybe not. It's definitely listed in this suite, though. So do also check out the Transition Suite on the hub. Okay, back to this. Any other questions? Okay. You're all very quiet today. This is unusual for parent centers, but we do welcome your questions. And here's the website again, the address. Deborah is suggesting that we migrate over things, and that's probably a very good idea as well. if you want to keep in touch with or share any ideas with any of us, please do write to these are our email addresses.
Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, Lisa. It's Helene Fallon. Hi, everybody. And Josie, that was fantastic. I just wanted to follow up with that. I know that I've seen the Undetermined website on the hub someplace. I just want to let everybody know that the resources, similar to everything that we're looking at on all the different pages that are on Undetermined, are really useful for helping. They're just different tools that can be used from preschool all the way through high school and young adults. And again, you can print them out. Everything is copyright free and available to use and copy and send out. And they work a lot with many of the PTIs. So it's a very easy site and very easy to navigate. So I'm excited to share that and maybe just see how we could connect it with some of the work that we're doing with the Parent Center Hub, because I think that a lot of the videos, and I do believe they have some materials also in other languages. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to throw that out there. And this is terrific. Thank you. And good to have you on there, Josie. You're always an inspiration.
Thanks so much, Helene. It's the I Am Determined resources are phenomenal. And they actually also have an app that individuals, that youth can use to do their planning. And it's fun and simple, and it's in the kind of format that really engages young people. So I'm so glad, Helene, that you reminded us about that. I know it is on the hub. It's curious that it didn't fall into the place where it is, but if folks search on the hub, I am sure that it's there. It's probably in the college and career readiness resources as well.
Yes, I think it is.
It's excellent. And really aligned with college and career readiness. Any other questions, comments?
I'll keep in touch, because
yes.
this is a
Hearing none, I really want to thank our presenters today. I want to thank Josie, and I really appreciate PEAL Center for lending her to us, lending her and all of her awesomeness, and particularly in the work that she's doing around youth development. I do encourage you, if you have youth development program that you have going, to connect your young people with Josie. She's just, super inspirational and also very, very knowledgeable. And so I think she's a great resource for the Parent Center Network, and I do really appreciate PEAL for sharing her. And I want to share with you my acknowledgments of our small but mighty SIPR team. Indira, who's been doing a great job in the back room, I guess you might call it, and also Miriam and all the work that Lisa has done in terms of putting together these resources in a way that it's going to be really easy for us to find them and put them to use as we take on some new adventures and opportunities and obligations. So I really am very appreciative of that. And I thank all of you for joining us. And please, if you have some resources that are from your center that you'd like to share in the network, or resources that you're aware of that you'd like to share with the network on this topic, we really would welcome them and are happy to post them for the use by the Parent Center Network. And last but not least, we'd like to hear from you. So we have posted the link to the survey in the chat box, or you can click right on that link. And we always want to hear your feedback, and let us know how we can do more and be better for you as it relates to this webinar and other webinars. So look for the announcement when the recording is available. And again, thank you so much. And we'll see you in 2 months because we're now on a schedule of every other month. And that's because we heard from you guys that you didn't really have time to join a webinar every single month. So we now have a schedule for 2015 of webinars every other month. So see you in May. Thank you very much.